New bipartisan reaction to Louisiana Senator Bill Cassidy's stunning re-election loss in last night's Republican primaries. Representative Julia Letlow, backed by President Trump, led the field, but she and Louisiana State Treasurer John Fleming now head to a runoff in June. The result leading to new questions on what it means to be a Republican in the Trump era.
In my experience, Senator Cassidy is a normal, honest, and very conservative Republican. And it turns out people like that have less and less of a home in Donald Trump's Republican Party.
Well, first of all, I don't think you should ever go against the president and vote for impeachment if you're going to plan on rerunning and running for re-election. Secondly, this is just another example. Donald Trump is going to try to get rid of anyone who is not helping him with his agenda.
Let's bring in former Missouri State Representative and CEO of Pine Street Strategies, Don Calloway, North Carolina Democratic Party State Chair Anderson Clayton, and Republican strategist and MS Now political analyst Susan Del Percio. Welcome to all three of you. So, Susan, does the president's endorsement still hold as much weight as it once did? I mean, between Cassidy and several state Republican senators in Indiana losing their re-election bids, it seems like it might, at least in primary contests.
Oh, absolutely, yes, when it comes to a primary. But I'd like to just highlight one thing when we look at what happened in the Cassidy races. The president's choice didn't break 50%, Alex. So it holds weight. But it was more about anti-Senator Casey, or Dr. Casey, we should say, or Cassidy, excuse me, than about being pro-Trump's nominee or choice. So I think that's important. It also is really going to be interesting when we look at the influence that the Robert F. Kennedy Jr. MAGA movement has, Make America Healthy Again, because they put a lot of money against Cassidy. And he is also going to be voting on his next Surgeon General nomination. So I think it's going to be a very interesting road for some nominations that go forward. But more importantly, going back to the Trump question, Donald Trump's candidate only got 44%.
Okay. So, Anderson, the president has made it a point to unseat congresspeople who voted against him, whether that's to indict him or break from him in other ways. What do you make of his mostly successful campaign overall to oust these lawmakers?
I think right now Donald Trump's endorsement weighs powerfully in primaries, but we've also seen those primary candidates go on to lose elections. And that's exactly what we saw in 2024 with Mark Robinson's endorsement for governor that Donald Trump had given him. And we've also seen that with Phil Berger, a state senator in North Carolina who used to be our most powerful Senate majority leader in the entire state, right? And honestly saw him lose an election after Donald Trump gave him his endorsement. So I've seen it at the state level not work in folks' favor.
So, Don, your thoughts on all this? Does it work in the primaries and it's not going to necessarily work in the general?
I think it's important that you spend time hearing what the folks on the ground are hearing. I spent a lot of time in Alabama and Georgia, and listening to those primary commercials, you realize that they live in a whole different world than we do here in this D.C. bubble. So the folks who are voting in a Louisiana closed Republican primary are a different breed of MAGA. You have to remember, these are the people whose parents and grandparents sent David Duke to the mat on their behalf more than one time for high office. And so I think this really highlights, listen, we like Bill Cassidy. I like John Kennedy as well. He is a staunch defender of the reasonable right, but that's not what's resonating when Donald Trump and Maha spends real money to define who you are to an insular far-right electorate. So I think this is almost a different case than anything that we can expect to play out in November. But at the same time, I think it's a safe seat either way. We really don't expect the Democrats to have a chance. But it's a fascinating case study in far-right primary politics.
Yeah. So, Anderson, there's a new poll out of North Carolina, and it shows former Democratic Governor Roy Cooper ahead of Republican Michael Whatley. And the poll points out a majority of voters surveyed haven't heard of or have no opinion on Whatley, so he's still getting his name out there. But how critical is this Senate seat for Democrat hopes of retaking the Senate? Because Cooper would be the first Democratic senator from North Carolina in over a decade.
We know that Roy Cooper is ready to be the next U.S. Senator from North Carolina, and that's exactly why he's got an 11-point advantage right now, is because people know him as a public servant and somebody who has just done right by the folks that are in this state that are currently being taken advantage of by folks like Michael Whatley in Washington, D.C. right now, who served as the RNC chairman, a political operative his entire career, and also a big oil lobbyist, someone who's going to take advantage of communities across this state rather than protect them. And Roy Cooper has that advantage because folks know his record in North Carolina, and that's what he's running on right now.
And Susan, former Bush advisor, now columnist Karl Rove writes, if anything could set Democrats back in the midterms, it might be too many voices speaking out from the farther left parties of this party, in this case focusing on New York Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. So how do you see it? Could independents or moderate Republicans be turned off from voting blue because of progressive voices? I mean, despite potentially being turned off by Donald Trump.
Right. I don't think that that's going to necessarily keep voters at home because of those national voices. I think, if anything, Republicans and independents are going to stay home because they don't support Donald Trump's agenda, not because they are necessarily worried about what an AOC or Bernie Sanders has to say for 2026. Looking at 2028, that's a whole different conversation to be had. But midterm elections are about the person and, a referendum on the White House, and also support of a candidate. These are individual candidates that have to promise change and something different and better for their for their constituencies in those districts. It is a local race.
Yeah. Well, let's have a little bit of that conversation, Dawn, because a new poll puts Ocasio-Cortez at the front of all Democratic candidates for the 2028 primary. Sure, a lot can change before then, but progressive candidates have had success since President Trump came to office. New York Mayor Zohran Mamdani, for instance. Should Democrats embrace these politicians and these platforms, or should they be concerned? And can a charismatic candidate overcome a lot?
I think Democrats should embrace a robust primary debate that follows rules that are accessible for everyone to be able to participate. The Democratic Party is and always will be the party of the big tent. And what you see right now is that there's certainly no dearth of talent at the varsity level. So at the top levels of the party, that right there is a diverse list. It's a list of people who are actually highly accomplished, and each of whom have staked their claim to have some piece of the electorate. Now, it is so far away to be able to tell who's going to be able to raise the money, who's going to make a mistake, who's going to resonate with that certain je ne sais quoi. We're so far from telling. But I look at this, and whether it's AOC or anyone else, I see a bunch of people who are actually qualified, but I'm also excited to see someone emerge, and I'm going to keep saying this, somebody's going to emerge from outside of the traditional electoral process. And at this point, young as she is, AOC is a traditional politician now.
So, Anderson, Trump took every swing state in the 2024 election, but his polling now is at historic lows for his time in office. Have Democrats won back enough of the coalition that Trump managed to put together in 2024? Like, what demographics, are you looking at, which you think could be decisive in November and then again in 2028?
Look, in North Carolina, we have 100 counties and the second highest rural population than any other state in the country other than Texas. And so we know in order to win statewide races in North Carolina, we need to go into places that our party for a long time has so often ignored. And they're the ones being the most hurt by these policies right now coming out of Washington, D.C., looking especially to rural eastern North Carolina right now, where our Black Belt region of the state is, Don Davis's competitive congressional district right now, where we're seeing the healthcare cuts from Congress impact communities across his entire region. And I think it's important that we're making the case to these voters on the ground about who's to blame right now for not only rising costs for their gas prices, their grocery prices, but also their healthcare costs, and also why they can't access the same healthcare that they were once able to in their communities. And attached to that, Don Davis's congressional district, I've got the most important state legislative race this year, too, to make sure that we hold Dante Pittman's seat in Wilson County, because we need to make sure that Democrats are looking down ballot every step of the way this year.
Okay, I know that is a primary focus of yours. We appreciate that. And the conversation from all three of you. Thank you guys so much.